Randolph Harrell, in case you didn't know. My middle name is Randolph because I was born on Randolph Air Force Base, and my dad was in fly school. Yeah. It was kind of interesting. My mom was, he's down there for a year, and Mom got pregnant while he was down there. And he graduated, and he was supposed to take off for his first assignment, but they wouldn't let Mom leave to get on an airplane because she was 2 weeks overdue with me. Something about 35,000 feet, 2 weeks overdue is not a good combination. But the Air Force was looking at Dad going, let's go. So he had Mom jogging around the golf course behind him on a golf cart trying to get me out. So I was born and I was 3 days old on a 727 heading for his first assignment, so I started flying early.
On the non-fold?
I was born on the non-fold, but I was born out there on the air base. So I started flying at 3 days early. So I started flying, and I wanted to fly because I was watching Dad my whole life growing up. And he went to his first assignment and started flying airplanes, and I was always watching him wanting to be a pilot like Dad. He was, you know, flying KC-97 refuelers, and I'd watch the crew chiefs go out there and spin those props, and they'd take off, and Dad would pull out in that 97 with his arm hanging out the window, and he'd wave at me as he rolled down the taxiway. And I thought my dad was the greatest guy in the world. And then when he got further along and got more rank and stuff, he became the chief pilot out there at the base at McGee Tyson. And every year when the Thunderbirds or the Blue Angels would come in, he'd be in charge of putting the show together. And of course, I got to meet all the Thunderbirds and Blue Angels, had their autographs. I got a picture of my office signed by all the Thunderbirds and everything. Of course, I wanted to be a fighter pilot, so that's what I grew up wanting to be. And in my locker in high school, we had those big 6-foot lockers back then. And in the locker, I had pictures of planes, jet fighter pilots and stuff I cut out from all the magazines Dad would give me. Whereas all the other guys from school had pictures of girls or cars or stuff like that. Of course, I had planes. So I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And of course, I wanted to be like Dad. He was a pilot, greatest guy in the world, in my opinion. But anyway, nobody from Sevier County, Tennessee had ever been to the Air Force Academy. And Dad had always told me, if you want to be a pilot, you have to go to the Air Force Academy. He said, the way flight school works is, everybody from the Air Force Academy that graduates goes to flight school. And they usually graduate about between 800 and 1,000 people a year. So they fill up all the flight school spots from the Air Force Academy. And if there's any spots left over, they take all the ROTC people who want to go to flight school and fill up the remaining slots. And that usually averages out to about 2 people per state. So if you don't go to the Air Force Academy, the odds are really slim of getting in. So the ROTC guys, it's about 2 people per state getting in. So you got to be really good if you're an ROTC guy wanting to go to the Air Force Academy. Want to go to flight school. So my goal was to go to the Air Force Academy, be a fighter pilot. So I went, but growing up in Sevier County, there wasn't anybody from Sevier County who had ever been to the Air Force Academy. So I was kind of starting out down here. So I started looking into the requirements to get to the Air Force Academy, and they were rather daunting. Those guys are pretty high-speed individuals that are out there. The key to getting into the Air Force Academy is being a rather well-rounded person. You've got to have academics, you've got to have athletics, and you've got to have a lot of civic type activities. You just got to be a well-rounded, high-speed individual. So my dad became a scoutmaster in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, so I could get into the scouting program. And actually, there wasn't a scouting program in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. He started it just so I could get in on it and become an Eagle Scout. So I spent from started in 79 or 80. So from 1980 to 1988, there was a scouting program in Tennessee, so I could become an Eagle Scout. And also, I didn't play any sports in elementary school because I was about this big around and about this tall. I wasn't very athletic at all. But when I got in the 8th grade and got serious about looking at the Air Force Academy, I noticed that you had to have basically one of the 3 big sports, baseball, football, or basketball. And I tried out for the basketball team in 8th grade, and I couldn't put that great big ball in that little bitty hoop. I tried out for the baseball team a couple times in elementary school because my best friend was a real good baseball player, but as many times as I swung that bat, I never could make contact with that white ball. So baseball was out. So I tried football. The thing was, I was about 5'6" and weighed less than 90 pounds. And so when I was choosing schools for high schools, Pigeon Forge didn't have a high school at that time. So you either went to Gatlinburg or Sevier County. And when I was in the 8th grade looking at high schools, Sevier County's high school was 0-10, and GP was like 9-1. So I figured if I was going to get in a football program, I'd go to GP just because they had a better team. So I showed up at GP. I was about 5'5" and 98 pounds. And I said, here I am. I'm going to play football. And the thing was, they didn't have a JV team at GP. Everybody made the varsity team. So here I am, varsity football player, about 5'5", 98 pounds. It was tough. Coach Hammonds was the coach. He was about as redneck as they come. It was hard. I got beat up, bruised up, and they stuck me on the 3rd string. Always held the dummies for the football team when they were practicing. And I was playing cornerback out here on this end. And they'd run the sweeps to the left. The 2 linemen would pull, and then there was a line, and the halfback would come around, and then our big running back would come around. And those 3 guys came around running for knock out the linebacker and the cornerback on that end. And I'm standing out here with this little dummy. And here came Ed Johnson, number 72. He's like this tall and this big. And the first thing he hit was me, and the first thing on me that hit the ground was the back of my helmet. I went through 3 years of that before I even got to play. But anyway, it was worth it. It showed on my resume that I played 4 years varsity football. And I never started again. I never caught a pass. I played wide receiver for 4 years. I never caught a pass. But the thing is, I was top 10% academic-wise. I worked hard on my academics. If you go anywhere in school, it's because, or anywhere in life, it's because you did good academically. So I worked hard on my academics, which was good. Another problem I have is allergies. Every spring and fall, I get bad. So pardon me if I'm sneezing and snorting. But anyway, I worked hard on my academics. I graduated in the top 10%. I learned that you're like the people you hang around with. So I figured if anybody was going anywhere, it was the smart people. So I played 4 varsity sports in high school. I played football, I played soccer, and I ran track and cross country. I did good in soccer though. I played soccer in elementary school. I played it 4 years in high school. I was the captain and leading scorer of the soccer team, so that was good. But I figured if you're going to be good, you got to be like the people you're going to hang around. So I hung around with the nerd herd. I figured if they knew grades, I should hang around with them. So whenever we had, all my football friends were out running around on the roads in Gatlinburg. While they were out running the roads, I was having calculus parties with the nerd herd. So we'd get together on a Friday night, order pizza, and go study calculus for the test coming up Monday. didn't care if I hung around with a nerd herd. My F-15 was my future goal. I focused. So anyway, I didn't care if I didn't get in with the in-crowd girls. I didn't care if I got killed on the football field. I didn't care if they called me part of the nerd herd. It was F-15s I was headed for. I figured the 4 years in high school didn't matter much. It was after the high school is where I was going. So anyway, I started applying for the Air Force Academy my junior year. My liaison officer said I was doing pretty good. I made Eagle Scout, had the 4 varsity sports. I finished in the top 10% of the high school class, thanks to the calculus and the physics and all the other stuff, French and everything else I did. Finished in the top 10% thanks to the nerd herd. They pulled me through. So I had 4 varsity sports, all the athletics, and I had a bunch of civic activities as well. I was part of the Interact Club, and I got to be their representative for the Gatlinburg, what was it? I don't know, one of the big, what is it, the business community, what's the name of that?
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce, that's what it is. I was the Gatlinburg representative for the Chamber of Commerce. So that looked good on my academy resume. So just a whole bunch of things made me a well-rounded person that the academy was looking for, which got me headed right for my F-15. So things were good. So I applied for the academy, and my liaison officer said I had one of the best packages he'd ever seen. So I found out later after I got to the academy that over 250,000, 250,000 kids applied for the Air Force Academy the year I did. And out of that 250,000 kids, over 60,000 were completely applicable, eligible, met all the requirements to get in. And out of those 60,000 kids, they took the top 1,600. So they took the top 1,600 kids, and I was one of them. It was over a $500,000 scholarship. It took over $500,000 to graduate a kid from the academy. So that's what you get when you get in a $500,000 scholarship to go to the academy. So I got there. First kid from Superior County to ever make it. So I was happy. And the whole time from 5th grade or whatever to get there, I had this Bible verse, Isaiah 40:31. Those that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles, and they shall they shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. I liked it best because of the Eagles part. F-15 Eagles. That's where I was headed. And I needed all the strength I could get to get there. My senior year of high school, the 6th period was football. And so my senior year, after football was over, I would come home early, and I'd be running up the roads in Pigeon Forge, running up the streets, and the buses would let out of school from Gatlinburg, and they'd be coming home about the time I was running up the sidewalks getting ready for football. And everybody would be hanging out the windows waving at me because they knew I was trying to get to the academy. So it was a big school thing to see if I can get to the academy. So I was feeling pretty good. So anyway, at high school graduation, the academy representative came to GP and gave me my appointment to the academy. Well, actually, before this, you have to have an appointment from either a senator or a congressman or a senator, a congressman, or a Tennessee representative to get to the academy. And it was Senator Gore or Congressman Quillen or Sasser at the time I was there. And so I applied to them for a nomination to the academy. And Sasser and Gore both wrote me a letter. Congressman Quillen gave me his appointment to the academy. They're allowed to have so many students there at a time. If they have 4 students there and there's 10 appointments they can give, they're allowed to give 6. But Quillen said he gave me his primary nomination. So he sent a list of like people there. He said, you can pick 6 of these, since I'm allowed to get 6 nominations. But he said, you take Ed Harrell or you don't take any. So I got his primary nomination. Sasser wrote me a letter and said, since Quillen gave you his primary nomination, I'm gonna give mine to somebody else. And Gore sent me a letter and said the same thing, since Quillen gave you his primary nomination, I'm gonna give mine to somebody else. So I was pretty happy. I thought the Lord has done me well. I prayed that he would help me do it, and he's got me going there. I thought, this is what I'm supposed to do. So anyway, I got to the academy, and I thought, F-15s is where I'm supposed to go. And then, while I was at the academy, you're required to take, the average course load at the academy is 21 hours a semester, which is pretty significant, I guess. And if you graduate with a degree in basic academics from the academy, you get a degree in engineering. And they also throw in some extra things, like the physical fitness program. You take boxing your freshman year, wrestling your sophomore year, judo your junior year, and unarmed hand-to-hand combat your senior year. So you know how to take care of yourself when you leave. And like I say, it's a MIT equivalent school. So by the time you graduate, you've got, if you take basic academics, you get a degree in engineering, and it's MIT equivalent engineering. And you take a bunch of survival classes. Like during your sophomore and junior year, you spend 2 weeks out in the woods, and all they give you is a rabbit. So don't name your rabbit. So, and between and then your sophomore year, they send you to an Air Force base, and you get to learn how to fly with a pilot. You'd spend your summer flying with a pilot, 2 weeks of your summer. And then your junior year, they send you to a European base where you spend time flying with a pilot. And so by the time they send you to fly school, you've already got 100 flying hours. Whereas the ROTC guy, the first time you even touch a plane is when you get to flight school, if you're one of the 2 lucky enough from that state to go. So Air Force Academy guys, by the time they get to flight school, they've already got 100 flying hours in a jet. So anyway, the academy's the way to go. I was where I was supposed to be, I thought. So anyway, there I am, going to the academy. And the thing is, my freshman year I was taking boxing. And I started having headaches at the end of the semester. And, well, also at the academy you're required to take an intramural sport. And the first half of the first semester I was doing soccer, which I played at high school, and they found that out, so they put me on the soccer team, and I did pretty good. That was fun. But the second half I was taking boxing. And I did pretty good. I only lost once the whole time I was there. I'd gone from this little scrawny kid, I grew 3 inches my first semester at the academy. I guess I finally hit my growth spurt at the academy. And I went from this little scrawny kid to a kid with a little scrawny waist and big shoulders. I got this V shape finally. Military will do that to you. My son's starting. But anyway, he's big when he left. He's huge now probably. But anyway, I finally grew up and got big and muscular. I went like this. Now I got that furniture disease, you know, where your chest drops into your doors. But, so, I was doing good at boxing, and I only lost once. But that one time I lost, I knew it. There was this black dude in the other corner with arms about this long. They rang the bell, and all I saw was his fist. Knocked me down 3 times in the first round. The ref came over and said, no more. I said, thanks. That's all I could do to crawl out of the ring. But anyway, by getting toward the last of the semester, I started having headaches. And I just thought it was from being done boxing every other day. And by the time finals rolled around, I was having lots of headaches. I was taking Tylenol and sleeping the best I could, which is not much. At the academy, your daily life starts out at 5 o'clock in the morning. You run 3 miles, take a shower, and you're at at breakfast about 7:30. And you get to bed about midnight, so you only sleep 5 hours a night, taking 21 hours of class and doing all that military stuff and whatever. But anyway, I was having some headaches, and then at Christmas Eve, I called home from Denver Airport to let them know I was on the way home. My brother picked up the phone crying and said that Gramps just died the night before of a heart attack. And so I flew home to Pigeon Forge and stepped off the plane and went straight into 3 days of funeral. And because nobody expected that, didn't expect Gramps to die. And so I kept having headaches and nobody thought anything of it. And then 3 days after Christmas, on the 28th, I had a really bad headache, made my vision blurry, made me throw up. And my dad, who was a pilot, knew that blurry vision and throwing up ain't a good combination. So he took me down to UT Hospital thinking I had brain damage from boxing or something like that. And they did a CAT scan of my head and found that the 4 sacs in the middle of your brain that make spinal fluid were all four times bigger than they were supposed to be. Literally smashing my brain from the inside out. And the doctor said if one of them were to burst, it'd kill me on the spot. So that night, they did an emergency operation with this tube in my head called a shunt. Goes in the middle of my brain, comes out right here. Runs underneath my skin to an empty cavity in my stomach, drain the fluid out of my head. And so they did that on the 28th. And they did an MRI the next day and found out that there's a brain tumor right there in the middle of my head. They had shut off the one tube that those 4 sacs drain through in the spinal column. And the tumor was about that big. There's a posterior third ventricle right behind the pituitary gland. And they said they had to get that out of there. So the Air Force flew a medevac in from Scott Air Force Base to Maryville to pick me up and fly me to Washington, D.C. to Walter Reed. You think those helicopter rides are expensive, you should try a 707 ride from Knoxville to D.C. just for your special hospital needs. But anyway, they flew that down here, picked me up, flew me to Washington. And on the 12th of January, they decided to take this tumor out of my head. President Reagan's neurological staff that they keep on hand for the president wasn't doing anything with him at the time, so they decided to operate on me. Yeah. They figured they'd get some practice. They said the best way to get that tumor out of my head without messing with any of the gray matter was to take my jaw off, cut the roof of my mouth out, cut the roof of my nose out, go straight up into the base of my brain that way, and drop the tumor out. But they said putting all this back together would have been a real mess rehabilitation-wise. So he said he had enough faith in his abilities to take the whole back of my head off, split the 2 halves of my brain, and go up over the spinal column with a microscope and a laser, and spend 12 hours in there cutting it out, and then slap it all back together and shove it back in my head. So that's what he did. The whole back of my head took off. They actually cut an upside-down horseshoe out of the skin, cut the big circle off the back of my head, and then split my brain in half and did this. Cut the tumor out, and then did that. So, you know. Mom and Dad said I was in there for like 12 hours. Well, actually, they came into my room, picked me up, took me down to the basement of Walter Reed through some germ-free security doors, and then took me down to another basement of Walter Reed through some more germ-free security doors, and then took me down to the third basement of Walter Reed through some more germ-free security doors, and then there's this big glass room that's like 20 by 20. Glass walls about this thick, and they opened up some big doors and they rolled me into here under this big thing of lights and closed that. So I was in this perfect germ-free environment, big string of lights with my neurosurgeon and his assistant and some nurses. And once I was in this perfect, clean environment, my parents walked in their civilian clothes. Because they didn't expect me to wake up from it. They said this was their last chance to see me, so they didn't care if they had germs on shot the juice into me, and that's the last I remember. And so, but Mom and Dad said he came out of the operating room 12 hours later like he just had his firstborn kid. Said they asked me to move my fingers and toes, and they said I did. Said I even tried to talk some. Won't tell me what I said, which is probably a good thing. But I don't remember the next 2 weeks. It took me 2 weeks before I regained consciousness to where I could focus and see things and notice things like my parents. But 2 weeks later, I woke up. But you know, when you smash your thumb, it's going to swell. They said the same thing with my brain. It was going to swell. So we just zipped the skin back together and left the bone out. So my brain pooched out. It felt like normal back here because my brain pooched out so far, even though it didn't have the bone. But about 2 or 3 weeks after that, the brain sunk back down in my head, which was really weird because I could put my hand back here, and if I'd go like this, my brain would fall down in my hand. When I go like this, it'd sink back down in my head. So I could go like this and have my brain moving around in my hand. And if I leaned back like this and I had a throbbing headache, I could feel my brain throbbing in my hand. It was really weird. You know? But they did a biopsy of the tumor and found out it was cancerous. So they let me recover for about a month. And then they decided to give me 6 weeks of radiation therapy to make sure they got all of the tumor. So they sent 6 rays of radiation to my brain. They crisscrossed right where that tumor was and just burnt the crud out of the middle of my brain to make sure they got all the cells out. So I went through 6 weeks of that. And then I recovered for another month. And they decided to put the bone back in my head. So I went around for about 4 months without the back of my head on here. And so they cut this back open and put a porcelain plastic copy of the bone back in my head. They made a copy of it, porcelain plastic, they said. They said it's hard enough you can bounce a brick off of it and it wouldn't hurt anything. I'm not going to try it though. But they said they had both pieces there in the operating room. And they said the false piece fit as well as the original piece, and the original piece had been out so long that it is as much of the false piece as this one. So they put the false piece in and tied it in with some little metal wires. I said, well, what'd you do with my original bone? I said, we destroyed it. I said, well, don't you think that made a pretty cool paperweight? I could put that on my desk and put Skittles in it. People can sit there eating M&Ms. Let me tell you about that candy dish. Let you know what the Lord did for me. But anyway, they got rid of that and put this back in, set the skin back over it, stapled it together. And I recovered for about another month. And then they flew me back to the Air Force, and they decided they didn't trust me flying their $40 million airplanes anymore. One of the doctors put in his post-op notes that the tumor was cancerous and it would probably come back in a year or 2. So he didn't recommend that I would be fit for service anymore, so they retired me and there went my F-15. Yeah, I was in a flying class up there. Did I tell you this part already? Where I was, the first flying class you get into at the academy is a T-37 simulator course. And out of 500, there's 500 cadets that take it each semester. And this is where you start proving yourself as a pilot. It's kind of a weed out course. They find out who's going to be pilot material, who's going to be engineer material, who's going to be other stuff. And there's 25 T-37 simulators, 2 cadets in each one, and 1 instructor that stands outside the simulator and sees how you're doing. But for some reason in my section, or my semester course, there's either 500 or 51 students or 49, because I got a simulator by myself. One of the students flies the plane, and the other student does the navigation and radio checks, while the other one just concentrates on flying. and then you swap seats, and the instructor grades you on your abilities. But for some reason or other, I got a plane by myself. And I talked the instructor into letting me do the flying and the navigation and radio checks simultaneously. So he let me do it. He said, well, if you think you can do both at the same time, go for it, good boy. And he graded me on my flying while I did the other stuff at the same time. Just like a regular pilot would do in a single-seat fighter, like an F-16 or a single-seat F-4 or something, I don't know. And I still flew better than all the other pilots in the class. And so, if there's 500 students, there was 10 sections, and I got the #1, I got the flying trophy in my section because I did it. I flew better than everybody else. And since there was 10 sections, there was 10 section winners, but since I was the only one who did it solo and the other thing at the same time, I was the section winner for the whole semester. So I kind of got the Top Gun award for the whole thing. So if I'd have kept going at that standard, see, the next class you get into is gliders. And then you get into the T-41s, which is Cessnas. And then you go to instructor pilot your senior year. And then you go to flight school. So if I was #1 here, and if I'd have been #1 in the gliders, and then glider instructor, and then #1 in the Cessnas, I'd have just maintained that standard and then went to flight school, #1 in flight school, and then I had my F-15. You know. Who knows? But I started off on the right foot. But here's the deal. Good Lord had other plans. So I came back here, went to Carson, and to be something else when I grew up. And here's where the story gets good. Yeah, sorry, you can watch the tape.
We watch video.
Yes, sir. So I came back here. How much time do I have? 10 minutes? So I came back here, went to UT, trying to do something else when I grew up. Found out I had a bit of a small seizure problem. Because of all this. It wasn't anything where I have epilepsy, where I was fidget or something. It's when I try to, when my brain gets tired or I don't get enough sleep, I can't think right. Or I have a small, she can explain it better than I can. But if I was taking a test at UT and I started getting stressed, I couldn't think or remember good, and I'd fail my test. Or I'd do good on the first third of the test. I'd make an A on the first third, a C on the second third, and an F on the last third. So I made all C's and D's at UT. So and I did that for 3 or 4 semesters. So, and plus I changed majors every semester because I didn't know what to be when I grew up. Because my whole life I was going to be a pilot. So then I went to Carson Newman, where they had smaller classes, and I finally figured out I was having this problem in my head because I didn't have it before I went to the academy. And I went to Carson Newman, and I talked to my professors, and I figured out this thing a little bit, and I told them, they let me take my test in their office, outside of class, with an unlimited time amount. So I took the test before the rest of the students, so I didn't have an unfair advantage. And I had an unlimited time amount, so since I didn't have any pressures causing me any problems, I finished the test in the same amount of time as everybody else. But since I didn't have the stress problem, I finished it around my time with seizures, and I made A's and B's. So I finished my degree at Carson Newman in business management with A's and B's. And I wanted to do something athletic again, but I couldn't play football because half my head's plastic. I couldn't play soccer because half my head's plastic. I couldn't box. So I figured if I couldn't throw punches, I'd throw throws. So I took up cheerleading. Married my cheerleading partner.
Hey.
So that worked out pretty good. And we had a couple kids. One of them went to Africa as a missionary while she was in high school. And now she's married to the son of a Filipino missionary. And so if they end up back on the mission field somewhere someday, and then I get to heaven and meet all these people running around and say, we're here because your daughter introduced us to Jesus. That never would have happened if this didn't happen. And when they did the biopsy of the tumor, they said it had been in my head since I was 4 years old. So I was gonna have this tumor whether I was a pilot in the Air Force or not. And since I wanted to be a pilot, I went to the Air Force Academy, where they won't require you to take boxing as your freshman PE class. And since I was boxing, it made my head start hurting. And they said the ventricles in the middle of my head were so swollen that they were about to burst when we found it. And they said the boxing caused it to start hurting before it burst in my sleep one night. They said if I hadn't been boxing, I'd have went to bed and woke up dead one morning. So they said the boxing saved my life. So because I wanted to be a pilot, I went to the Air Force Academy. I started boxing, found that my head started hurting. And I was in the military. They sent me to Walter Reed, where I got the best surgeon in the world to do my surgery before or if I had found this before, I would have went to some regular doctor who might have messed me up. And since I was in the Air Force, I got a retirement out of it. And it's all worked out great. I've got a testimony I get to share with people. I go to churches, speak to youth groups, and say, you may have your whole life figured out, and the Lord will take you and do a 180. You may have no clue why, but just trust Him and go with it. And 25 years down the road, or you may be in heaven and get to look back down on it, but you'll eventually see why it happened. And now I volunteer down at UT Hospital on Mondays, working the cancer ward, and say, you may not know why you're here, but just trust the Lord, take it one day at a time, and see what He does with it. You may never get healed from it, or you may, but your life may affect other people, and you'll have a testimony to share or something. Just go with it. So, that's what I do. So that's my story. And plus I came back here and got to meet Julie. That's pretty good too. She makes good sense. So I go too long?
No, you're good.
Anybody want to close this in prayer? I'm not supposed to do this, sure.
Father, we just acknowledge who you are, and Lord, that what are miracles to us are just routine for you. We thank you for Ed and for his testimony. Father, may it remind each of us that you do have a plan for our life, and Lord, it's not just the end, it's every single day. May we acknowledge who you are, and that you love us, and that your plan is so much better than what we think our plan for our life or our day may be. So may we, Lord, take time every morning to not ask you to adjust your plan for our schedule, but Lord, that we would be still and quiet before you and seek your will for our life that day. Lord, we know that it'll not only be better, but Father, we'll have joy in our heart. So again, thank you for Ed and his testimony and his willingness, Lord, to set his desires to the side and acknowledge you and be grateful for all that you've done in his life. I'll go with us now into the worship service, that we might truly continue to worship you in spirit and in truth. And Lord, may our hearts be full of joy to know that you do love us. Thank you for our precious Savior, Jesus Christ, and it's in His name that we pray. Amen. Awesome, Ed. I had no idea you were hiding all this, man.
Wow.